What's going on, guys? Welcome to our first episode of Crash Course, brought to you by the Coin Collective channel. I'm Alex.
I'm Douglas.
Today we're going to be talking about fiat currencies, the history behind them, Bitcoin, Ethereum, smart contracts, proof of work consensus, and why cryptocurrency is an important investment now. So what is fiat money? Everyone knows what the US dollar is, the euro, the pound, the yen. So what are they? Well, according to Investopedia, fiat money is a government-issued currency that is not backed by a physical commodity. That doesn't sound very sustainable to me. And most of the public nowadays doesn't think so either. Since the Federal Reserve has been printing money like there's no tomorrow, most of the American public has lost their good faith in their currency. So they're trying to find different assets they can invest their money into to beat this inflation that is right around the corner. To put it into simple terms, if you make too much money by printing it, then it's going to take more money to purchase the same things you were able to purchase with $1 yesterday.
So the value of your dollar has decreased because there's a greater supply.
Exactly. So what should you be doing to make sure that your dollar continues to have the same purchasing power it had yesterday or 1 year ago? So I'm sure most of you have had a Big Mac if you've ever indulged in unhealthy foods. In 1970, a Big Mac cost 65 cents.
Yeah, now the Big Mac's $5.
So the United States was not the first country to invent the idea of a currency that's backed by their government or good faith. If you go back to the times of the Romans, they debased their currency into oblivion. They started out with a gold coin, and then over time, they would clip the coin because they had bad policies that they implemented. And then after the coin was clipped so many times, they had to start mixing it with other precious metals, such as silver. And then when they mixed too much silver into it, bronze, until the currency was worth absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and when that happened, the whole empire fell.
Exactly. This is a mistake that governments have made time and time again throughout history. You simply just can't print money into oblivion.
That's cool and all, but what does this have to do with crypto?
Well, Douglas, I'm glad you asked. So cryptocurrencies don't have a central government controlling their supply. Once the supply has been created, according to the computer programming, you simply can't make any more. What that means in simple terms is there's only a finite supply.
So think of gold. That has a finite supply, so it has value.
Even gold has its own drawbacks. Even if I wanted to, I can't just walk into Starbucks and pay with a gold brick for a cup of coffee. So crypto provides that medium of exchange with the finite supply of, say, gold or silver or these other commodities that they have. So a question a lot of people have is, if it's a computer program, can it be hacked? So that leads us into the blockchain. So for starters, what is blockchain?
Well, it's a type of database that stores information in groups known as blocks.
These blocks have specified storage capacities.
And when they're filled, they get added to the blockchain.
So what is the data inside of these blocks?
It can be any information. It's usually transaction data.
Meaning if you buy a coffee or you go to the grocery store or you pump your gas, all of these transactions can be stored on the blockchain.
Blockchain isn't just limited to normal transactions. You could store most types of information. So supply chain data, all sorts of different types of files, like you would store on your computer.
Since the world runs on data and these blocks are comprised of, well, data, you can imagine that the adoption of this technology is virtually limitless. So how do we trust the blockchain? How do we make sure that no one messes with the information stored in these blocks or the blocks before that?
Blocks are linked together on the blockchain using a cryptographic hash of the previous block. And that cryptographic hash is the link or the chain.
This chain is how you are able to read the block before the block you just created, and the block before that, and the block before that. This hence creates immutability.
And that just means you can't change the data. So if you tried to go into a specific block and change that information, since it has the previous hashes, you'd have to go back and change all the other ones too.
This is why blockchain information is so trustworthy. So let's just do a quick recap. We explained to you what a block is, the information that is contained inside of these blocks. We explained how these blocks are connected through that cryptographic hash or the chain. And we explained the immutability or trust layer that blockchain adds. So that leads us to the question of who's adding these blocks and how do we know when to add them?
A blockchain functions almost exactly like a normal accounting ledger or journal does. It holds a record of information. A blockchain is a record of data that is geographically spread across multiple sites, countries, computers, or institutions that are known as nodes.
Unlike with a centralized database, there is no centralized administrator. The ledger of information is distributed and shared amongst nodes on a peer-to-peer network. All of the nodes have the exact same copy of that ledger. In layman's terms, peer-to-peer is simply from person to person or computer to computer.
So in order for blockchains to work, they need a peer-to-peer network, and they also need something known as a consensus algorithm. A consensus algorithm performs two tasks for the network. It guarantees that the next block added is the only version of truth. And it also protects the network from malicious attacks on nodes and the network itself.
So a node is basically like a cell tower. It acts as infrastructure for the network and keeps everything running smoothly. A node can just be simply a server farm or a large computer, or even your laptop.
Back to consensus. Consensus basically means everyone is up to date and everyone is in agreement, all of the data is recorded correctly, and everyone has the exact same information.
So now we know about consensus and a 30,000-foot view of how the blockchain works. Consensus can be performed in many different ways.
So for an example, we'll go over how Bitcoin performs its consensus.
Bitcoin comes to consensus through what is called proof of work.
In the case of Bitcoin and most proof-of-work blockchains, the nodes or computers have to solve an extremely hard math problem in order to add a new block to the chain and create consensus. So when a transaction comes in, it gets added to a group of unconfirmed transactions, and the nodes or computers on the network take these unconfirmed transactions and put them into blocks so they can add them to the chain. Once a block is full and they can't put any more information in it, the node will then have to solve a very complex math problem before they can add their block. This is why it's known as proof of work. They have to work in order to add the new block. The work aspect is for two things. One is to defend against malicious nodes. It could be someone with inaccurate transaction information. An attacker would have to go extremely far out of their way to alter the data, and they would have to expend tons of energy just to even try to add their block. Trying to solve the math problem wastes an immense amount of energy. So you may be wondering, why would you waste all that energy just to add a block? Well, nodes are heavily incentivized to do so. If they solve the problem first and they win the right to add their block, then they get rewarded with newly created Bitcoins. This is what's known as mining. This is why you have seen those huge companies with tons of computers mining Bitcoin. It could potentially be very lucrative. Another reason that they have to solve the math problem is because of something called forking. A soft fork occurs when two different nodes solve the math problem at the same time, and they both add their blocks. In this case, the blockchain gets forked into two different paths. One path has this block, and the second path has the other block. Since there are slight differences in when nodes on the network receive the blocks due to varying connection speeds, the network will be divided. Nodes will accept the block they received first. So some nodes will start to solve the math problem for one path, and others will solve for the other path. The fork is fixed, and one blockchain is chosen to be the main path when the next block is added to one of them. So if a node solves the math problem on path B before a node on path A, then that means that path B will now be the main blockchain, and the fork is resolved. The block from path A is thrown away back into the group of unconfirmed transactions. So for Bitcoin and most proof-of-work blockchains, if they didn't have to wait 10 to 30 minutes trying to solve a complex math problem, then all of the nodes would be adding new blocks at the same time, and the blockchain would be forking all of the time and there would never be consensus.
Bitcoin allows for 100% secure and immutable peer-to-peer payments through a full consensus distributed ledger. No intermediaries are needed for a transaction. For example, a Bitcoin payment does not require Visa or MasterCard or your local bank.
Bitcoin's original purpose was to be a peer-to-peer payment system, and people tend to hold on to it because it's got such a finite supply, so it's going to increase in value.
So what was originally meant to be something for just decentralized payments has turned into more of an investment because of the low supply and reckless money printing by world governments.
And since Bitcoin's open source, developers can build off of it and improve it and make other alternatives, which is exactly what's happening now.
For example, Litecoin, which is a fork of Bitcoin that is used for peer-to-peer payments.
And Litecoin is literally lighter than Bitcoin, so it's better for peer-to-peer payments.
So Bitcoin was the first mover, and then Litecoin became a fork because it was literally lighter, like Douglas said, and could be used for peer-to-peer payments with less energy use. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin was the first mover and is only blockchain 1.0. Shortly after Bitcoin was created, a nerdy college kid named Vitalik Buterin created what is known as Ethereum.
You've probably heard of Ethereum. This is another cryptocurrency, except it's expanded on Bitcoin's ideas and can be used for much more than just payments. Its blockchain can handle a lot more, and I'll explain how. Ethereum, much like Bitcoin, uses a proof-of-work algorithm for consensus. However, luckily the transaction time is a little quicker on the Ethereum network. It usually takes around 60 seconds. But as you know, the proof-of-work algorithm is super inefficient, slow, and outdated. Transaction costs are also extremely high since you pay mining nodes a gas fee to validate your transaction. The more you pay, the faster they'll validate your transaction on the network. But the big difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin is that Ethereum can be used for more than just payments and store of value. Ethereum was specifically created and designed to support smart contracts. They can be programmed in a special programming language called Solidity. This language was specifically created for Ethereum and uses a syntax that resembles JavaScript. So a lot of people can learn it.
Okay, so let's recap really quickly. We've talked about blockchain, Bitcoin, proof of work consensus, Ethereum, and now we're going to talk about smart contracts. But odds are you're not here to learn how to program smart contracts. We're just telling you about them because you may run across one when you're doing a swap one day.
Smart contracts are just like contracts in the real world. The only difference is that they're completely digital and you don't need an intermediary for trust.
So let's take a look at an example to better understand how smart contracts work.
You probably are familiar with GoFundMe. It's a fundraising platform, and a team can visit the GoFundMe website, pitch their project, set a funding goal, and start collecting money from others who believe in their project. GoFundMe is essentially a middleman that sits between product teams and backers. This means that both parties need to trust GoFundMe to handle their funds accurately and appropriately. If the project reaches its funding goal, the project team expects GoFundMe to give them their money. On the other hand, backers want their money to go to the project and nothing else, or to get a full refund if the project doesn't reach its goal. Both the product team and its supporters have to trust GoFundMe. But with smart contracts, we can build a similar system that doesn't require a third party like GoFundMe. So let's create a smart contract for crowdfunding.
Let's go to the computer to better explain this. So what you see here is we got 4 Ethereum tokens on the left. We have our smart contract with a $1 million funding goal, and then we have our project team right here. So we can program the smart contract so that it holds all the received funds until a certain goal is reached, hence the $1 million goal. The supporters of a project can now transfer their money to the smart contract. So this Ethereum has now been sent to the smart contract. If the project gets fully funded, the contract automatically passes the money to the creator of the project. And if the project fails to meet the goal, the money automatically goes right back to the supporters. Pretty neat, right? And this is all handled with the code within the smart contract, just doing some binary ones and zeros to make it simple. So why would we trust a smart contract over somebody like GoFundMe? With this technique, no one is in control of the money. Since it's on the blockchain, it inherits all the cool properties we described earlier. Decentralized, immutable, and distributed. Smart contracts can be used for a lot more than just automatic payments. They can be used for digital identity, trade finance, financial data recording, supply chain management, clinical trials, trading activity, financial security, financial services, government, insurance, escrow, or even mortgage systems. So as you can see, the potential of this technology is not to be ignored. So now that we've talked about blockchain, Bitcoin, proof of work, Ethereum, smart contracts, let's backtrack a little bit to Ethereum and a problem you will run into when transacting on their network. So for the next part, we're going to explain something you will run into when transacting on the Ethereum network: gas fees.
So on the Ethereum network, with each transaction, there's a fee, and that's a gas fee. That's a fee that you're paying to the nodes that are validating your transaction.
Right, so think of it literally as gas. In order to get from your house to work, you have to have gas in your car. This gas works as the digital oil for your transaction to go through.
The gas fee is directly correlated to the network traffic. So the more traffic on the network, the higher the fee is going to be. And if you want your transaction to be validated quicker, you can pay more.
So this is the difference between Bitcoin proof of work and Ethereum proof of work. And this is how the nodes or miners get incentivized.
So for Bitcoin, they're actually mining and creating new Bitcoins, and that's how they're paid. On Ethereum, they're not creating any new ones. You're just going to go ahead and pay them a fee straight up.
And through these fees, you are paying these Ethereum nodes to validate these transactions. So gas is how the Ethereum nodes get incentivized, just like the Bitcoin miners get incentivized through mining, solving that math problem, and creating new Bitcoin. So as you're probably thinking, is this the only method of consensus for these different blockchains?
Not at all. There's actually newer and better, more efficient protocols that are coming out every day.
There are tons of other protocols that use different consensus mechanisms, such as gossip about gossip, proof of stake, hypergraph transfer protocol, but don't worry, we're not going to get that deep in today's episode. Okay guys, so let's do a quick recap. In today's episode, we talked about blockchain technology, Bitcoin, proof of work, different types of consensus, Ethereum, smart contracts, gas prices.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Okay. But we're glad you guys stuck around. In the next episode, we're gonna talk about decentralized versus centralized exchanges, how to buy your first cryptocurrency, how to send it, which is very important. And we're also gonna link down below a really, really useful website that shows you the best days and time throughout the week that you can get in Ethereum gas prices.
All right, we'll see you on the next episode.
See ya.